All right, so I have a few updates for the latest version of MIAP, version 2.1.0, which is just a minor increment over the recent 2.0. Wanted to add a few extra things now that I got the majority of the good stuff done. And I'm going to use the display tab of the MIAP.map help patch just for convenience. So one thing I've been wanting to do for a while and is now in here is snapping to grid when you create a node or edit a node, move it around, and so on. So we have two different types of grids that we can display. This is not new, Cartesian or polar. And we can snap to either of them when we're creating nodes now. The functionality is off by default, but it's easy to turn on. You have Cartesian grid snap and polar grid snap as the attributes. When you have both selected, Cartesian grid is the one that actually takes precedence. So Cartesian, you should really only select one at a time, but if you have both, then Cartesian is going to be the one. So let's do Cartesian first. Before, when we created nodes, they would just kind of go wherever. And the same thing when we edited them, moving them around, they could go anywhere. And that's great. As an option, that's still the default behavior. But if you want it to be cleaner, you've always been able to change the size of the grids. But now it's not just visual, it also has a functional purpose. So we can snap to that grid. So let me do that. I'm going to enable Cartesian grid snap, and let's make a few nodes. And we can see that the nodes always fall on the vertex for the grids. And when we edit them, let me select two of them. It'll look as if they're continuously moving while you're mousing around, but when you let go, they'll snap to the closest corners of the grids. So that's really convenient. You can also, this could be destructive as well, so be careful. It probably will move things around when I do this as an example, but if you highlight an entire map that hasn't been created this way and kind of jiggle it, it'll snap. So that didn't do perfect things here, so you got to be careful. But it'll snap all of the nodes to the corners of the grid depending on the size of the grid that you created. So that could be something that's nice to clean up old maps. But more importantly, creating new maps and editing them is now, it's easy to make them visually symmetric and clean. So let me delete these nodes and let's look at polar snap. Okay, so same thing. It'll snap to the corners of the polar grid if you have that enabled. And that will depend on the settings that you have, polar radial divisions and polar concentric divisions. These are the defaults right now, but you can set them differently. And if I edit these nodes and I move it around, it'll do the same thing, it'll snap. So snapping to grid functionality is now in there, which is really cool. Off by default, but easy to turn on. Another big thing is the behavior of the messages coming out of the output, the left output of MIAP.map. Before, in version 2.0, it was just outputting the messages that were essentially documenting all the messages being sent wirelessly to the MIAP or MIAP panner. Now you have the ability to turn that on or off, and it's off by default. It won't come out the outlet. So at report messages is what you would enable to then see those messages. And I'm printing them right now. I'm just sending them to a print object. And again, they're just kind of documenting what's happening under the hood. So when I create a node, it will output the scripting message that was sent to the panner object. So we can turn that on and off now. And I've added, more importantly, I've added hints, which are, sorry, let me delete these. I've added hints, which are essentially documenting what your options are for the different modes, for the different interaction modes as you create a map and as you edit a map. All the things that I documented in the last video and are also in the XML documentation. Now, for convenience, because I think it's a nice thing for people when they learn to know what to do next. Some of these things are complicated. You can enable report hints, and then I have it set up now that it was print to the max window. So firstly, when you select a mode, an interaction mode, it'll tell you what what to think about, what that mode does. Click and drag to move the mouse node. Create nodes. Click to create a node, shift click on an existing node to delete it, and so on. Some of these are more complicated than others, like edit links. There's a bunch of things that could happen for editing links. So when you select the mode, it'll print something that is also in the XML documentation, but it's right here for you in real time. And then in the case of editing links, it'll also give you some information as you're moving forward because it's a multi-step process to edit links. So when I let me select this derived node, select a primary node for a link, it tells me what to do next. Click on a linked speaker node to select the link. Shift click on a linked speaker node to select multiple links. So if I, let me select, shift click on a speaker node, and it selected the link, it'll let me select more. But now that I did that, it says set the link weight attribute to update selected links. To unselect a selected link, hold shift while clicking on that link so I can unselect it, or press the delete key to delete the selected link. So delete key. So it gives me information about what to do next, and which is really helpful, especially in those situations where there's multiple steps involved and different rules. I think edit links is the most probably useful here to kind of give you that step-by-step play. But for all the others, you can read the hint that is posted when you move to that mode. So those are the two biggest things. There's another little detail that didn't exist before, which is when I select a node, I can now shift click on that same node to unselect it, just like you can unselect a selected link. That didn't exist in 2.0. The default radial and concentric divisions have changed. And that is it. So most importantly, snap to grids, and also this ability to output hints and gate either the output of hints or the outputting of messages.